Hello, Carmen. Welcome to the interview. I'm glad to have you here today. Let's start by discussing your knowledge of econometrics in a data science context. Can you explain what econometrics is and its significance in the field of data science?
I have a solid background in econometrics, both in academia and in a professional setting. At my previous job with XYZ FinTech, I frequently employed econometric methods in various projects.
Can you give a basic explanation of the principle of endogeneity?
Endogeneity refers to a situation where an explanatory variable is correlated with the error term. It is a common issue in econometric analysis and can lead to biased and inconsistent estimates. An example would be omitted variable bias, where a variable that influences the outcome is not included in the model.
How have you applied the principles of endogeneity in a real-world scenario?
At XYZ FinTech, we were investigating the impact of credit score on loan defaults. We suspected that there could be an omitted variable bias. After further analysis, we discovered a correlation between income level, our omitted variable, and both credit score and loan defaults. We corrected for this using a two-stage least squares regression.
What econometric models are you familiar with?
I have experience with a wide range of econometric models including linear regression models, time series models like ARIMA, panel data models, and limited dependent variable models like logit and probit models.
How have you utilized time series analysis in a real-world project?
We use time series analysis to forecast stock prices at XYZ FinTech. We applied an ARIMA model to historical stock price data and used it to predict future prices. This helped the trading team make informed decisions.
What experience do you have with panel data?
I worked on a project where we studied the effects of financial education on individual savings habits across different states over a period of time. We used a panel data set for this study, allowing us to control for individual heterogeneity.
Can you explain the concept of heteroscedasticity?
I worked on a project where we studied the effects of financial education on individual savings habits across different states over a period of time. We used a panel data set for this study, allowing us to control for individual heterogeneity.
Can you describe a situation where you encountered heteroscedasticity and how you addressed it?
Heteroscedasticity occurs when the variability of the error term in a regression model is not constant across all levels of the independent variables. This violates one of the assumptions of classical linear regression models and can lead to inefficient and unreliable estimates.
How have you used econometrics to inform business strategy?
In one case, we were considering the launch of a new product. Using econometric analysis, we forecasted potential sales under various market scenarios. This helped shape our product launch strategy and pricing model.
Can you describe a time where your findings from an econometric analysis contradicted business intuition?
We once did an analysis on user engagement with our mobile app. Contrary to expectations, increased engagement did not significantly affect user retention. It turned out that user experience, rather than the quantity of interactions, was the key driver of retention.
How familiar are you with the concept of multicollinearity?
I'm quite familiar with it. Multicollinearity arises when there is a high correlation between two or more independent variables in a regression model. It can make it difficult to ascertain the effect of each variable on the dependent variable and can lead to unstable estimates.
Have you dealt with multicollinearity in your work?
Yes, while working on a project at XYZ FinTech to determine factors that influence customer churn, we noticed that the age of a customer's account and the number of transactions made were highly correlated. We addressed this multicollinearity by combining them into a single variable that represented account activity.
Can you explain the Durbin-Watson statistic and its significance?
The Durbin-Watson statistic is used to detect the presence of autocorrelation in the residuals of a regression analysis. If the residuals are autocorrelated, it implies that our model is missing some information that is contained within the data. The value of the Durbin-Watson statistic ranges from 0 to 4, and a value around 2 suggests no autocorrelation.
How did you employ the Durbin-Watson statistic in your previous work?
When building our model to predict future stock prices at XYZ FinTech, we used the Durbin-Watson statistic to test for autocorrelation in the residuals of our time series regression model. We found no significant autocorrelation, which suggested that our model was correctly specified.
Tell us about a time when your econometric analysis led to a surprising insight that significantly affected business decisions.
At XYZ FinTech, we noticed that new signups were decreasing. I conducted an econometric analysis and discovered a surprising negative relationship between our marketing spend and new signups. Further investigation revealed that our ads were being shown to the same audience multiple times, causing annoyance and deterring potential customers. This insight prompted a complete revamp of our marketing strategy.
Can you explain the Durbin-Watson statistic and its significance?
The Durbin-Watson statistic is used to detect the presence of autocorrelation in the residuals of a regression analysis. If the residuals are autocorrelated, it implies that our model is missing some information that is contained within the data. The value of the Durbin-Watson statistic ranges from 0 to 4, and a value around 2 suggests no autocorrelation.
Could you explain the difference between cross-sectional and time series data?
Cross-sectional data is data collected at a single point in time, often from multiple entities. Time series data is observed over time for a single entity. For instance, data on GDP for multiple countries in 2020 would be cross-sectional, while data on US GDP from 2000 to 2020 would be time series data.
How have you utilized cross-sectional data in your work?
In one project, we used cross-sectional data to understand the factors affecting the adoption of our mobile banking app across different demographic groups at a single point in time.
Do you have experience in nonparametric econometrics?
Yes, nonparametric methods can be powerful when we don't want to make strong assumptions about the functional form of the relationship between variables. For instance, at XYZ FinTech, I once used a nonparametric regression to model the relationship between income and expenditure, without assuming a specific functional form for the relationship.
Can you talk about a time you used simultaneous equation models?
In a project to understand the dynamics of supply and demand in the peer-to-peer lending market, we used a simultaneous equation model. It allowed us to capture the simultaneous determination of interest rates, loan amounts, and default rates.
What is your experience with model selection techniques?
I've used techniques like forward selection, backward elimination, and best subset selection to select the most appropriate model. I also rely on criteria like the Akaika Information Criterion, AIC, or the Bayesian Information Criterion, BIC, to select between models.
Could you explain an instance where you used a probit or logit model?
We were trying to predict the likelihood of a customer defaulting on a loan. Since the outcome was binary, default or not default, I used a logit model, incorporating factors like credit score, income, and loan size.
Can you explain an instance where you utilized instrumental variable for regression?
When analyzing the effect of interest rates on loan defaults, we suspected endogeneity. We used the Federal Reserve's policy rate as an instrument in an for regression, under the assumption that individuals cannot directly influence this rate.
How have you used structural equation modeling in your projects?
In a customer satisfaction study, we use structural equation modeling to understand the relationship between different aspects of our service, like app performance and customer support, and overall customer satisfaction.
What is your experience with survival analysis?
I use survival analysis at XYZ FinTech to study the lifetimes of our products, specifically how long until they become obsolete. This helped us to strategically time our product upgrades.
Can you describe a project where you utilized a random effects model?
In a study of customer churn across different states, we used a random effects model to account for unobserved, state-specific factors that could affect churn rates.
Have you ever had to present your econometric findings to a non-technical audience? How did you go about it?
Yes, I often had to present my findings to executives at XYZ FinTech. I focused on the key takeaways and their business implications, and used visual aids like graphs and charts to help convey complex ideas.
Have you used econometrics to forecast key business metrics?
Yes, we frequently used econometric models to forecast metrics like sales and customer churn. This helped us anticipate future trends and take proactive action.
How have you evaluated the accuracy of your econometric models?
I've used various metrics to evaluate model accuracy, like mean absolute error and root mean squared error for regression models, or area under the ROC curve for classification models. I also used out-of-sample testing to validate model performance.
Can you explain an instance where you used a fixed effects model?
In a project analyzing customer spending patterns over time, I used a fixed effects model to control for individual specific attributes that were constant over time but could affect spending.
Can you explain Granger causality and its significance?
Granger causality is a statistical concept used to test whether one time series can predict another. It's not causality in the traditional sense, but can provide useful insights in econometric analysis.
Can you give an example where you utilize the concept of Granger causality?
At my last company, we used Granger causality tests to see if changes in the Federal Reserve's policy rate could predict changes in our loan default rates. The results helped us anticipate the impact of monetary policy changes on our business.
Can you explain the concept of stationary and non-stationary time series?
A time series is said to be stationary if its statistical properties, like mean and variance, remain constant over time. Non-stationary series, on the other hand, have properties that change over time. It's important to check for stationarity before applying many time series models.
Have you used co-integration techniques in your work?
Yes, we used co-integration techniques in a project where we were examining the long-term relationship between interest rates and inflation. We wanted to know if they moved together in the long run, despite short-term fluctuations.
Can you explain how you would handle overfitting in an econometric model?
Overfitting is when the model is too complex and captures the noise along with the underlying relationship. To avoid it, I try to keep the model as simple as possible, use cross-validation, and apply regularization techniques like lasso or ridge regression if necessary.
Have you used econometric models to analyze experiment results, like from A/B tests?
Yes, in my previous role, we often ran A/B tests and used econometric models to rigorously analyze the results. These models helped us quantify the impact of changes to our website or app on user behavior.
Can you explain a situation where you used ridge or lasso regression?
We once built a model with many potential predictors for customer churn. To prevent overfitting and select the most relevant variables, we used lasso regression, which helped us arrive at a more parsimonious and interpretable model.
Have you worked with generalized method of moments, GMM, estimators?
Yes, GMM estimators are quite powerful, especially when dealing with complicated models. I once used GMM in a project where we were modeling the decision-making process of investors in our platform, which involved multiple equations and endogenous variables.
How familiar are you with principal component analysis?
I have used principal component analysis in situations where we had a high number of correlated predictors. By reducing them into principal components, we could mitigate multicollinearity and simplify our models without losing much information.
How have you incorporated machine learning techniques into your econometric work?
Machine learning and econometrics complement each other well. For instance, machine learning can help in variable selection or in handling nonlinear relationships. I've used random forests and neural networks alongside more traditional econometric models in several projects.
Can you discuss a time when you used an error correction model?
We used an ECM in a project where we were examining the relationship between income and consumption. The ECM allowed us to model both the long-run equilibrium relationship and the short-term dynamics.
Have you used Monte Carlo simulations in your econometric analyses?
Yes, Monte Carlo simulations are helpful when dealing with complex models where analytical solutions are not feasible. I've used them in risk analysis to simulate the effect of different economic scenarios on our portfolio.
How do you validate the assumptions of your econometric models?
I use various diagnostic tests to check the assumptions. For example, I might use the Bruch-Pagan test for heteroskedasticity, or the Durbin-Watson statistic for autocorrelation. I also inspect residuals plots and QQ plots.
How familiar are you with factor analysis?
Factor analysis is a useful technique for reducing dimensionality, similar to PCA. It's useful when you have a large number of variables and you suspect that there are latent variables driving the correlations. I used factor analysis at XYZ FinTech to identify underlying factors affecting customer satisfaction.
How have you used Bayesian methods in econometrics?
Bayesian methods are valuable when we have prior information about the parameters. At XYZ FinTech, we used Bayesian methods to incorporate expert knowledge into our models.
Have you dealt with qualitative or categorical dependent variables?
Yes, when the dependent variable is categorical, we can use models like logistic regression for binary outcomes, or multinomial logistic regression for multiple categories. I've used these techniques in projects predicting customer churn or product choice.
How do you ensure the robustness of your econometric analyses?
Robustness checks are crucial. This might involve trying different model specifications, testing the sensitivity of results to the inclusion or exclusion of certain variables, or using different datasets.
How do you deal with endogeneity in your models?
Endogeneity, where an explanatory variable is correlated with the error term, can bias our estimates. We can address this using techniques like instrumental variables, control functions, or panel data methods, depending on the source of the endogeneity.
Can you describe a time you used difference in differences estimation?
At my last company, we introduced a new feature for a subset of customers. To evaluate its impact, we used a difference in differences approach, comparing the change in behavior over time between the group that received the feature and a control group that didn't.
Lastly, could you share your experience with spatial econometrics?
While I have not used spatial econometrics extensively, I understand its value in capturing spatial dependencies, for instance, when modeling housing prices in different neighborhoods. My focus so far has been on time series and panel data, but I'm open to learning and applying new methodologies as needed.
Can you share an instance where you applied autoregressive models?
I used autoregressive models in a project at my last company to forecast key business metrics. These models captured the correlation of a variable with its own past values, which proved to be a valuable insight.
Excellent responses. You've demonstrated a deep understanding of econometrics in a data science context. Your comprehensive examples and insights are truly impressive. We appreciate your time and effort in this interview. We will now conclude the interview process. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today and for your comprehensive insights. I must say, your depth of knowledge and hands-on experience have given us a lot to consider.
I appreciate the opportunity to share my experiences. I enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited about the prospect of bringing my skills to your team.
That's great to hear. Our team will be in touch soon with the next steps in the process. Regardless of the outcome, I hope you continue to leverage your impressive skills in the field of big data. Best of luck with your job search and future endeavors.
Thank you for your kind words. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Goodbye for now.
Hello, thanks for joining us in this deep dive into econometrics and its potential benefits in data science. We hope you found it informative and useful. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the like button below and leave us a comment with your thoughts or any questions you might have. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us create content that best serves you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with our latest videos. Click on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we post new content. Also, you can become a Patreon supporter today. Until our next video, keep learning and stay curious. Thanks for watching.